All right. Well, we are back. It's season two. We recorded this episode a little while back. We promised it, God knows how long ago, in a little trailer we put out. And we're finally getting around to releasing it. And what's happened in the meantime, of course, is the Jacob Blake shooting. And, obviously, like, do or don't watch the video. Everyone knows the point. There was a guy walking away from the police. He opened his car to get in, and he did get in. And then the cop, at like point blank range, shot him in the back 7 times. Like, I did watch it, and it was brutal. And, he didn't die, thank God. And he has recently woken up. And what I find really fascinating about this, obviously, there's a lot of stuff we could say about it politically, but just one thing I always thought about is, like, could you imagine if we could, like, right now talk to George Floyd? You know,
Yeah.
by all accounts, like, this kind of shooting at point blank range, 7 shots, should have killed him, right? But he lived, and Decatur has the quote pulled up of what he said to his dad when he first woke up.
Yeah. Fucking absolutely heartbreaking. Where wakes up, sees his dad in the room with him, and he says, "Why did they shoot me so many times?" That is heartbreaking, and it's even more heartbreaking to think that his son asking the grandfather, "Papa, why did they shoot my daddy in the back?" Which is just hardcore to an entirely new level. And if you guys have no sympathy or empathy for that, I have to question your entire existence.
Yeah, your morality, your ability to empathize, or willingness to empathize with other people. That's the fundamental problem. This episode is about fascism, of course, and fascism is just the manifestation, kind of the extreme version of what we're seeing kind of bubbling up right now, which is this far right ideology that's just very
Right.
pro police state, very pro military, very pro state violence. Like, we have our far right ideology, and we're going to force it on everyone with violence, right? And, like, we're going to question anyone who questions authority. But when you look at countries that have a less violent police force, that they're not all armed, when they're just like, they operate differently with their police, the numbers are drastically less. And what I mean by that, quite literally, is just in 2018 alone, in the United States, police shot to death 1,000 people, just about. And in that same year, the number in Germany, the UK, and Australia, each one of those countries, the number was like less than 12 people were shot to death by police. So, right, like, that's a
Well,
drastic difference.
yeah, and I think honestly too. I mean, I think we need to, talk about this story. It's important. It's obviously the biggest thing in the country right now. If I'm sure it's making international headlines too. But like, I think Steve, where you and I are both coming from is, look, no one on this podcast is all lives matter. I highly doubt anyone listening to it has sentiment like that. I'm not here to convince anyone that, Black Lives Matter. I think we all know that at this point. I think what's really important is to understand why we are no longer shocked at how the right responds to this. And this is the terrifying part of, now we're starting to see the people who come back, the counter protesters, openly shooting protesters, and it being justified on Tucker Carlson, on Hannity, on Breitbart, on all these things. That this is the time now where things are starting to change. The tide is turning, and public opinion is going up for Black Lives Matter. We all are incredibly aware now of how shitty the cops have been, at least as the left, and the center left is coming around to it. But the fact is, the right is not going to go down without a fight. And people need to realize that. And that is the scary part. They are not going to look at the humanistic aspect of Jacob Blake. They're just all going to chalk everyone up as murderers, as rapists, whatever they are. Incredibly important to point out that I'm not here to try to sway you to Black Lives Matter, because that time has passed. I'm sure if you're listening, you're already on our side, and we still should be working and making that a visible thing here. But I think why this really unfortunately ties into our episode that we have today is because we are talking about the steps that a country moves into fascism. And when we take the humanity out of society and politics, then it is soulless, it is violent, it is war. And I think that's the scariest thing. So I think we really need to look at everything going on right now with an extremely humanistic point of view, which is why I think Steve's pointing out, like, what are they saying to their parents? look at other countries. Other countries don't kill their citizens like that. Like that is human loss. That is not only them. That's
Yeah.
their family. That's their sons. That's their cousins. All that, which is obviously
Yeah, I
terrifying.
mean, what was so like what I think made us both tear up when we heard the quote from Jacob Blake when he first woke up was like, we almost get in our heads like these guys are now every victim of police violence now becomes like this figurehead in a political movement. But like his first question was just like so fucking basic. It was just why? Like why? When people try to tell you it's a compliance problem, not a police problem, don't fucking fall for it. And the reason I say that, and I'm not expecting any of you would, but when you hear someone saying that shit, just point out to them how fucking stupid it is. Because there's really two answers. There's something wrong with the police, or there's something wrong with the people, the fucking population. And so, what is more likely when you compare us to other countries and we see, oh, these other countries don't have this problem? So, don't tell me we can't have nice things. The question is, how do we get to that point, right? Because we can get to that point. We're human beings just like the human beings in all those other countries. So what's more likely? Is there something about our government that's different or something about our population that's wrong? Which is like, I don't know if you're really sitting around wondering if it's our population is just like diseased in a way that makes them deserve to be shot by the police, then you're a fucking asshole. And that's your fucking problem. It's just stupid. It's not logical. It's immoral. It's inhuman. And like, if you're holding on to those kind of beliefs, just look in a mirror and think about this for a second. Like, why do I think this shit? Why is it so important for me to not believe that there could be something wrong with our system that uses too much violence on people? Because newsflash, as we're going to talk about in this episode, there's been governments throughout history and currently on the earth today that use a shit ton of violence against their population. So why is it such an incredible idea that we might be in that situation here too? Albeit to a lesser degree in some ways. For a lot of our population, we already are there. We're about to talk about fascism. Are we there? Little spoiler, we're on our way. I don't know that anyone would say that we're quite a fascist nation at this point. I mean, a lot of people would, and they're not totally wrong. But like, if we just look at the degree of violence used as a matter of like a sliding scale, we're like just not quite to like what Nazi Germany was, but we are ramping up that ideology. And you're going to see I quoted Trump throughout this episode and just comparing it to what like historical figures have said throughout history, and it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah. So thanks for coming back to season 2. This was the worst way to have to introduce it, but it felt wrong not at least saying our sentiments on the issue at hand without it would have been weird if we just skipped it, but it happened after we recorded this episode. We just wanted to say something real quick. So
Yeah.
I guess without further ado, I hope you guys are happy to learn about how even more depressing this country can be with an episode of fascism.
Yeah. And look, this episode it was difficult to edit because it's got like, we do try to lighten the mood, but we also, there's only so much you can do that with fascism. So, enjoy.
Make no mistake, this left-wing cultural revolution is designed to overthrow the American Revolution. In so doing, they would destroy the very civilization that rescued billions from poverty, disease, violence, and hunger, and that lifted humanity to new heights of achievement, discovery, and progress. To make this possible, they are determined to tear down every statue, symbol, and memory of our national heritage. That is why I am deploying federal law enforcement to protect our monuments, arrest the rioters, and prosecute offenders to the fullest extent of the law. I am pleased to report that yesterday, federal agents arrested the suspected ringleader of the attack on the statue of the great Andrew Jackson in Washington, D.C. And in addition, hundreds more have been arrested.
That's when we started getting real philosophical.
Oh yeah.
You don't know the art we're trying to spit out right now. Art we're trying to spit out right now.
And we're here to say, fuck your liberal, huh? Fuck your liberal, huh?
You're upset that we went to Iraq for oil? Well, too bad. Take a look at your ass. You shouldn't be able to see it that easy.
How it works, lefties have something.
And we're on.
We are back.
Yay! It's a podcast. We're here, and we.
It's a podcast.
What's this happening to my ears?
There's a lot that's happening to your ears, Steve, because let me tell you, we are in season 2 of the greatest podcast / worst name podcast in the history of mankind.
Our our name sucks. Oh man, that's a whole story. But before we get started with any of that, I'd like to introduce our new producer. Yeah, we got our good buddy Peter, and I'll let him introduce himself. But he's going to be producing this podcast. He's also going to be a guest on a upcoming episode.
Oh man, you're making me introduce myself? You guys are like the laziest hosts in the fucking world, man.
You think I have notes on you? Tell us who you are.
All right.
We don't even have notes on the episode today.
You guys just hired me off the street. They didn't give a fuck.
Yeah, they're like, hey, do you know how to use a computer?
We're desperate. We need help.
You're not joking.
There's
All right.
no pay.
My name is Peter Pants. My day job is I'm a clinical psychologist, so you can call me Dr. Peter Pants if you wish.
He's
But
a head shrink.
insofar as this podcast goes, you can simply call me Pete or Peter. I'm joining in to help these numbskulls stay on track, because if you haven't noticed, they have not produced any content in probably a month. They hit me up for money. I signed up for their Patreon, and these fuckers just shut it all down. So,
That was the whole scheme. We just wanted to create enough episodes that we can trick a bunch of people to sign up for our Patreon, take their money, and run. Now we have $12.
We're being held accountable, which is unfortunate, because when Steve and I started a Patreon, we said, let's just make sure this podcast is enough for a few, like 3 specifically 4 for $4 Wendy's combos, and then we're out of the game. Here we are. We got dragged back into the game. The game needs us.
Yeah, I love that we put out that little trailer to promise everyone we're still going to make content, and it's like, what did we promise? Like later next week, and what are we, like 2 weeks late now? I mean, this is horrible.
terrible.
Yeah, this is we're trash, guys. But here's what I love about this audience is that we've lowered their expectations to like the ground. Like they have no expectations from us. They're just like, hope these guys do an episode one day. Like they're still subscribed. I love this audience. Like, you know, there's really harsh people out there who are like, if they're not on time every week, I'm out. And that's not you guys. We love you guys. We can treat you like shit and you keep coming back.
Right. I think that's what we're doing here. We have bigger problems at stake today, Steve.
Oh yeah. We got a producer trying to make us do work.
But the important thing, there's something really important that's gone in American society this week.
What is that?
Ben Shapiro has learned what happens to an aroused clitoris.
Here are some of the lyrics. You ready? Whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. Hold up. I said certified freak 7 days a week. Wet ass P-word. Make that pullout game weak. Yeah, you effin' with some wet ass P-word. P-word is female genitalia. Bring a bucket and a mop for this wet ass P-word. Give me everything you got for this wet ass P-word. Give me everything you've got for this wet ass P-word. Beat it up N-word. Catch a charge. Extra large and extra hard is significantly more vulgar. Like, a lot more vulgar.
And now that we're all broken in with that really uncomfortable thing and we've lost half our listeners already, enough about Shapiro. This guy, he sucks and he deserves no more of our time. Maybe a little more, but not right now. Today we're talking about fascism. And how do you know when you're on the verge of becoming a fascist country? We're going to go through the history of fascism. You know, you hear the word fascist being thrown around a lot. So we want to make sure we actually understand that word and how that's different from other forms of authoritarian governments. You know, it's not just a police state, right? It has a unique meaning and a unique ideology that goes with it.
It's not just a term for evil, although like fascists you could very argue are evil, but like there is an actual root of this all and all that.
Peter, what do you think about fascism?
Are you a fascist? We should have asked that before we hired you.
All right. With that, I think we take our first break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about what fascism is all about.
Give me everything you've got for this wet-ass P-word. Beat it up, N-word. Catch a charge. Extra large and extra hard.
So our job in this episode is to make everyone depressed. And the way we're going to do that is to talk about like literally the worst form of government ever conceived.
Hey, wait, I just thought of a great scam. It's like we just have a podcast to make people depressed, and then we just give more and more business to Dr. Peter Pants.
Just give his information at the end. Like, if you're sad, call Pete.
So let's start at the very root of fascism, just so where it comes from here. So fascism comes from the word fascizo. I don't know how to say it in proper Italian and all that, or Roman, whatever, but it means a bundle of sticks. The Romans would beat the subordinates with a bundle of sticks, and sometimes an axe when they got out of line. So like, oh, you're not, I don't know what the Romans did. Make a toilet fast enough, we'll beat you. If you talk back to the leaders, we'll beat you. All those sort of things.
You could just say if someone acted up.
Yeah, if someone was acting tough in these streets. This is before guns, so what they had was they'd take out the bundle of sticks on you,
Fucking sticks, man. Yeah, you complain about the police today. Imagine if they just had to carry a bundle of sticks around.
Could you imagine?
It would probably be a better world.
But that's why you see a lot of fascist logos. They have an axe with a bunch of like lines because it's supposed to symbolize a bundle of sticks.
It's fucking weird.
That's where the origin of this all comes from. And the fascist party, it started in like 1915, 1916 by a very disgruntled man who was kicked out of a socialist political party. That man's name was Benito Mussolini.
Never heard of him.
He's like Mario with an angry face,
Hey, man, don't hate on Mario. He saved the princess. He's good. It's a little male chauvinist, but, he did the right thing in the end. I'll stand by Mario. But I think that, like, it's really fascinating to remember, like, whenever anyone hears the word fascist, immediately their mind goes to Nazi Germany and how really Italy was kind of the origin of this ideology on an actual, not like the first racist, but they were the ones to actually make fascism an actual national platform that took control of a government.
I had the liberty of reading Mussolini's autobiography in the past.
Quote, unquote, autobiography.
Clearly he had a ghostwriter, which, if I write a book, I'll probably pretend it was me.
I don't got time for that shit. Just write good stuff. Let me know how it turns out.
So what did the fascist party stand for? So fascism is like a mixture of authoritarianism, nationalism, and like corporatism. And we'll break down the tenets here in a minute. It's about being the strong man, law and order. It's really a fitting episode because we're just passing essentially about 100-year mark now.
And I'm just going to summarize what one article back from 2003. I'll link it in the description. The article is called The 14 Characteristics of Fascism by Lawrence Britt. And I kind of rephrased a few and condensed a few. Ultranationalism, or the one-man theory. The next hallmark is to be against human rights. The supremacy of the military, the obsession with national security. Another hallmark of fascism is controlling mass media. Right? You want to be in charge of the message, propaganda. A fascist government is obsessed with protecting corporate power. It is very much a capitalist form of government. And hand in hand with that is suppressing labor power. These are really critical parts of this government. This is where they derive a lot of their strength, if not all of their strength. The next part is the disdain for intellectuals in the arts. An obsession with crime and punishment, which kind of goes back to the supremacy of the military, obsession with national security. It's all about this, like, I can use violence to show my strength, right? That's what a fascist government does. The next part of the list is rampant cronyism and corruption. This idea that a government is built on loyalty and corruption above all else. And if you're already getting scared as I read this list, that's good. The last one that should really fucking scare you, and we're going to talk about this, is fraudulent elections. They pretend that it's a democracy when it, in fact, of course, is not. So let's get into this a bit, man.
So what are the characteristics of fascism? First one, ultranationalism. So that is nationalism on steroids. If Barry Bonds was nationalism.
We will state the truth in full without apology. We declare that the United States of America is the most just and exceptional nation ever to exist on earth. We must take care of America first. It's time.
I actually heard Ben Shapiro defending the right, saying, we have lots of intellectual debate on the right. There's a big debate right now between nationalism and patriotism. And he didn't take a position. I don't know what his position is or really care, but what is the difference?
Of patriotism and nationalism?
One's a little more racist.
Well, I mean, the Patriots are a football team, so that's like a huge part.
Okay, I have my answer.
I think patriotism kind of goes hand in hand. That's just like being proud to be a part of your nation, whereas nationalism is more about the actual politics. And ultranationalism, that to the extreme, about kind of rebirthing the nation.
Now, time for us to work together as we rebuild, renew, and recover the great promise of America. And that's true. We're going to work together. It'll all work out.
Having a very specific vision, possibly like ethno-nationalism and stuff like that.
It's a horrible situation that we've placed ourselves in. We have thousands and thousands of illegal immigrants in our country, not only taking jobs, but many of them are causing problems beyond belief. And you see that all over.
We recognize the solemn right and moral duty of every nation to secure its borders. And we are building the wall.
The idea here is, nationalism is like, fuck everyone. It's all about our country. Whereas patriotism is all about like, whatever about other countries. I just love my own country.
Of course, ultranationalism is like specifically like we need to stomp out other nations in the name of our nation to get higher up. And, normally it's extremely xenophobic, racist, all those great qualities you look for in a dictator. You can find it in the beginning of ultranationalism.
And is this where we get into the whole idea of ethnic purity?
Yeah. Hitler, Mussolini, who are the most famous of the fascists, both believed in the one-man theory, which is like, we're going to make the perfect human being. And of course, since you're an ultra-nationalist, you believe the perfect human being would come from Italy or Germany or whatever country you're from. So if you are an ultra-nationalist, you believe the perfect man is made with elements of someone from America, which doesn't really make sense because we illegally stole the land.
Yeah,
you get the point.
Right.
Above all, our children from every community must be taught that to be American is to inherit the spirit of the most adventurous and confident people ever to walk the face of the earth. Americans are the people who pursued our manifest destiny across the ocean, into the uncharted wilderness, over the tallest mountains, and then into the skies, and even into the stars.
If you were really truly an ultranationalist, one-man theory in North America, you should be in favor of the indigenous people, but neither here nor there. That's not what they believe because they're idiots. This is not a ideology rooted in logic. It's an ideology rooted in hatred and exclusionary politics, but I digress.
Facts don't care about your feelings. So
another great Ben Shapiro.
Give me everything you've got for this wet-ass P-word.
So the one-man theory really relies on pseudoscience and eugenics. Of course, has been debunked numerous times, but even if you did believe it, you could point to why does it even fucking matter? But the whole point is like, we're going to make the strongest, the most intelligent, the biggest, the fastest, the tallest man, the most beautiful man.
Right.
Hitler definitely became very obsessed with that towards the end of his career when he was kind of on the way out, and everyone was like, oh, we can tell he's losing it because he was like, build this statue of this German looking fellow. Mussolini definitely did that as well. And actually, when he invaded Libya and Ethiopia, he took a lot of notes of techniques they used to create the perfect Italian man. Mussolini was really, really heavy in the one-man theory,
which is surprising because we don't hear that. We always hear that about Hitler, right? And this is just a lack of education on the Americans, including myself, knowing anything about foreign policy and foreign politics and history. But you hear all the time about Hitler and his desire to create the perfect blonde-eyed, blue-haired Aryan man. But Mussolini, although he didn't share the same idea as Hitler is what the perfect man is, he agreed with the idea of creating a world exclusive with just one kind of man.
So Hitler is extremely influenced by Mussolini. Steve and I have talked in the past and really have just kind of confirmed with each other that Hitler definitely wanted to fuck Mussolini.
It's true. Like Hitler had
And he's
feelings
not a
for
looker.
Mussolini.
Like there's this,
Right.
they just had a weird love relationship.
You complete me.
Well, I don't know. For me, like 1 week of it was like it's like going on holiday with, like, I don't know. I wouldn't say Hitler, but certainly Goebbels. It was like a little holiday with Hitler.
Jesus.
You know, as we're talking about Hitler being fascinated with Mussolini, tell me if it sounds familiar. So this idea of like what became a really horrible government all was started by one guy with a huge ego who had this like love obsession with some foreign authoritarian leader and wanted to emulate everything he does. Like, I don't know, maybe something that's going on today. You draw your own conclusions. But okay, I digress.
You're talking about Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau and his obsession with
Trump.
with the
Oh
Bolivian.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, last name. Vladimir Putin.
Well, he's done an amazing job of taking the mantle, and he's taken it away from the president. And you look at what he's doing, and so smart when you see the riots in a country because they're hurting the Russians. Okay, we'll go and take it over. And he's really going step by step by step, and you have to give him a lot of credit. Interestingly, on the Miss Universe pageant, we just left Moscow. He could not have been nicer. He was so nice and so everything. But you have to give him credit that what he's doing for that country in terms of their world prestige is very strong.
Last thought. Who's the better leader? President Obama or President Putin?
Well, it's not even a contest at this point. It's not. Now, Obama can maybe come back and maybe something happens, but so far he has played Obama like a fiddle.
So next we have is a disdain of human rights. So essentially, your emotions about what you feel humans are doing deserve their rights to be taken away, as opposed to living by an actual script or moral code about this is always this is that. So it just everything is a gray area because your emotions get in the way and kind of blind kind of anything you see as opposition almost.
There's no bright line. There's no like line in the sand where you're like, I won't do that to anybody, right? Because you're driven instead by your kind of crazed ideology that you need to come about in the world, and anything that stands in opposition is a problem as opposed to human rights.
Exactly.
Well, human rights are an obstacle.
Exactly.
We have fantastic military, we have fantastic National Guard, and I really am suggesting, because if you look at Minnesota and the great success we had there and other places, I'm suggesting to some of these governors that are too proud in New York, I mean, you see what's going on there, call in the National Guard, call me. We'll have so many people, more people than you have to dominate the streets. You can't let what's happening happen. It's called dominate the streets.
Next on this list is the identification of enemies. So something that Mussolini, Hitler, and you see this that Franco did in Spain, who's kind of considered a more lightweight fascist in a sense, an authoritarian more so, or Pinochet in Chile, is they go for their political enemies immediately and they villainize them. In this case, and we got to remember the context and time, right? Now we look at communism and Marxism as these dirty words kind of in society. But at the time, these were like these great utopian society words in Europe, and they held really positive meaning. So what Mussolini would do is kind of villainize the communists and the Marxists and go around finding liberals who were considered the centrists, still applicable 100 years later,
Right.
and kind of say, hey, these communists, Marxists, they're fucking crazy. Like they're gonna burn your house down, and they're trying to silence you, and you don't get your rights this way, blah blah. So that's when Mussolini and the black shirts would just roam around assaulting women of communist leaders and all that sort of things, and really just making communists the enemy. Also, Hitler did the same thing, of course. Franco did the same thing.
We are now in the process of defeating the radical left, the Marxists, the anarchists, the agitators, the looters, and people who, in many instances, have absolutely no clue what they are doing.
Moving on from that, a big one for all fascist regimes is an obsession with security, laws, and military. So those kind of really go hand in hand. So that's why
Just
many
strength, like national strength.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny because all the fascist leaders were not necessarily strong people. You know, they were kind of built like Michael Cera at one point in their life, and which is okay. I'm not knocking the.
No, you know, he's a sweetheart. He's a sweetheart.
I used to go to parties and pretend I was Michael Cera. You know, like that's how I became popular. With
yeah. You've got the Michael Cera build. You can say it.
And there was a time where Michael Cera was that guy to be. All right, when Scott Pilgrim came out, it was a different time in society.
Oh no! And then there was he the playlist shit? What the hell was that movie?
Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist.
Yeah. Was that him?
That was him. Yeah, and he.
Yeah. Okay, that's the Michael Cera I think of you as.
Oh, thanks, man. That movie's terrible, but I appreciate it.
Hi. I know this is gonna sound weird, and I'm a total stranger, but would you be my boyfriend for 5 minutes?
What? That was the movie that had the girl from Two Broke Girls in it, right?
Dude, I don't know. I didn't even watch it, man. It just looked adorable.
Oh, dude, I love me a dumbass indie rom-com. Shit makes my heart melt.
Yeah. 100%, dude. And like, do you think they have those in fascist countries?
I think people really assume that fascists just shut down art completely, which really hasn't been the case. I mean, they'll shut down politically driven art. I mean, like Hitler loved art. He tried to get into art school, which is, you know, famous. That why everyone sucks in life.
Everyone thinks that's why he killed everybody. Like, I wanted to go to art school, man.
Right. And I mean, rightfully so. I mean, I was accepted into an art school, which is why I didn't become a murderous dictator. I do love a good indie rom-com, and that's the important part about fascism. Less art and more, they're just less about art and more about militarization, which is why you see military parades in so many fascist regimes throughout history.
Right. They're all about this display of like physical domination, right? Like we have laws that we enforce and we have a will that we can enforce by actual like violence. Like that's a huge theme of a fascist country. Obviously, that's the one most people are familiar with is this like police state, right? You have big military, big police.
Right.
We support the courageous men and women of law enforcement. We will never abolish our police or our great Second Amendment, which gives us the right to keep and bear arms.
All right, so another really important hallmark, though, right, is this idea of propaganda in a fascist country, right? And they're all about manipulating what people believe. It's really important that, for example, in school, everyone's familiar with Hitler's Youth and this whole idea of like training people from when they're young to fall in line to this fascist ideology. So this is how they raise you: is like a good guy is on this side, is on the fascist side.
Against every law of society and nature, our children are taught in school to hate their own country and to believe that the men and women who built it were not heroes, but that were villains. The radical view of American history is a web of lies. We believe that our children should be taught to love their country, honor their history, and respect our great American flag.
There's a few more hallmarks I wanted you to talk about a little bit, and that's this idea of patriot police.
Yeah.
Maybe, and then also then the one right after that would be just this idea of mass encampment and imprisonment. So we're going to talk about those two.
Patriot police is really what we see when we look back, especially. I keep, bringing up Italy, of course, because they invented the fascist party as we know it. So I'm going to bring them up as much as I want. Fuck you, all right? That's what I'm doing here, okay?
You wanted to hear about Hitler? Go to another class. This is Mussolini class. Get out of here.
So the Patriot Police are kind of really what Mussolini and the fascist party in Italy really strived to create with the black shirts. They used black shirts, by the way, is because the only other group in society that used it at the time were the anarchists. And they kind of wanted to be looked at as in the same way as anarchists in a lot of ways. They decided to start marching around the streets, bring up, hey, fascism, Italy, Italy, Italy. So really close to what we see in modern times of like the Proud Boys, for example. That's kind of what you can think about with them. So
wait, Proud Boys, like we talked about in a previous episode where they don't jerk off at all?
Right, exactly.
Is that the same guys?
Those are the guys.
They think it's important not to jerk off, so they so they can have more strength in public or whatever, like ready to fight more because they're sexually frustrated. I don't know.
And yeah, so they're just going around, and not only are they just harassing people who don't agree with them, but really they're trying to push that Italy was wrongfully fucked in World War One because they should have had more say with Albania, and Albania should be theirs. A lot of things like that, geopolitics after World War One. Obviously, a lot of countries got screwed out of that. Germany as well being one of them that lost a lot of land in that.
Right.
So it became this whole thing of like, hey, we are better than this, we're stronger than this. We're going to make Italy great again. Foreshadowing.
Right.
Italy really practiced this idea with the
Really
black
clever.
shirts. They'd go around and they would say, hey, like, we're going to rebirth Italy. We're going to make it strong.
So what did they actually do though? Were they beating people up or just what? Just
They would
like
beat
walking
people
around
on the
with their-
left up and say, and then be like, well, they were acting violent. And then
Ironic.
Italy was having a lot of union disputes and things like that. So people were picketing. Patriot police kind of worked in accordance with the Italian government without ever being asked to. So they would go and say, hey, like, stop protesting. You need to go back to work type thing. No one was paying them, but they have this, it's the Patriot police. They have this idea of like, I want to be a part of making Italy better. So you need to shut the fuck up because we're in this for Italy, not for you. So that's kind of what the Patriot police are as far. And later, the
Right.
brown shirts, Hitler gets the idea of the black shirts.
Because he's like, I want to do that.
Right, but he couldn't find black shirts, and they used brown shirts because they of all seriously because all of the uniforms they have left from World War One, and that's why they're the brown shirts.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
So wait a second. But in Germany and Italy, you make it sound like in Italy it was like a spontaneous like private thing, like just random private citizens did it. Was it actually directed kind of by Mussolini, like he wanted this happening, or
So it's
did we know?
actually up for debate what came first, black shirts or Mussolini. And actually later in Mussolini's career, the black shirts ended up turning against him.
Wow,
It's a little different than the brown shirts in the sense the brown shirts were literally working for Hitler,
like government, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Whereas the black shirts were working to put Mussolini in power mostly, and they were
Interesting.
kind of a catalyst to get him. And they actually were in the huge part of the March to Rome or the March on Rome, where they ran up to the king and were like, "Hey, Mussolini's going to be our prime minister now." And the king was like, "Cool, I don't want to die today, so fuck it, like go for it, brother."
Yeah.
So there's a couple more tenets that I just want to hit real quick. And one is the deference to authority.
It's like an ideology, a nationwide ideology. Respect authority. That's our nationalist pride, is to respect the leaders.
And that's why we kind of look at people crazy, right? When they're super obsessed with a leader, because you're like, okay, you're acting like what people do with dictators. And then the most
you mean like when people are cheering on the arrest of protesters? Yeah, I get it.
yeah, exactly. Get them out of
Right.
there.
Get out! They're rabble rousers.
So the last one, so we can wrap up this segment, because we have a producer now, and
Who's like, hey, you guys are rambling.
and we don't want to embarrass him in the very first episode. Otherwise, he won't be back, and then you guys won't get an episode
Yeah.
for 3 weeks.
I now see what kind of problems you're dealing with.
We're very talkative guys.
Now I know why you can't produce any
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah. Okay, most important, who cares about comparing? But to me, it's like the biggest glaring sign of a fucking huge problem that everyone thinks of when, especially when they think of Hitler, right? Is this mass encampment issue, right? Where you're just like rounding people up and removing them from society.
This has been something we've seen all throughout history. You know, the Ottoman Empire, of course, did it with the Armenians. I say, of course, because apparently that's still a big thing where a lot of people deny that shit actually happened.
Wow.
But yeah, it's essentially just imprisoning people without any charges, anything like that. Even if there are, like, we're not going to give them the time of day in court, all those sort of things. So we don't just see that in Hitler's Germany, but we see that a lot with Mussolini. Mussolini had huge mass encampment.
And who was Mussolini locking up? Because everyone knows Hitler was locking up, of course, Jewish people, but, you know, of course, a whole bunch of other ethnic minorities, including Catholics. And
So this is actually
so-
like a really important aspect to bring up, because I think that we somehow think that concentration camps are specific to locking up like Jewish people. You know, like we have in America, we're just taught only about that. But really, it's important to think that
right.
It's just whoever the enemy is. Whereas Mussolini wasn't as racist in the sense of like I hate, like, Mussolini wasn't the crazy anti-Semitic that Hitler was. He probably was anti-Semitic, because who wasn't in 1930? They were all dirtbags. But
Right. And this is not to downplay, of course, the enemy in Germany was Jewish people, right? So of course Jewish people were the target there, the major target.
Right.
It's just that to be a true fascist, it doesn't mean that you have to be anti-Semitic, although you probably are. And definitely the people in the United States are absolutely anti-Semitic. They're fascists.
Right. And
that's
also,
a huge
I mean,
problem.
Hitler got a lot of his views on Jewish people reading Nietzsche, because Nietzsche criticized Judaism and Christianity a lot, and Hitler took that, one way, of course, and decided.
Whoops.
Yeah. Whoops. Exactly. but what a lot of people don't realize is one of the biggest concentration camps in world history was what Mussolini did in Libya and Africa in general. He locked up a lot of African.
Never talked about.
That is
Jesus.
The bright, no dark spot history of what fascism is.
All right, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so now it's recording. Okay, and just know it's not like live or anything, obviously. That would be weird if people were just sitting around waiting for us to finish that conversation before. So I'm just going to edit the relevant portions, so don't feel like you have to be on edge or anything. I won't edit you to sound dumb. Although you might sound dumb, but depending on your answers. We're playing a game we call Mussolini, Hitler, or Trump. And the game is you have to guess who said it, Benito Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, or Donald Trump. And if you get it right, you get $1. And if you get it wrong, then you have to give me $1, and I'm going to donate it to the Trump campaign. So
what? Okay.
So the stakes are high.
Oh my god. I don't agree to that.
Oh God! Wow.
You want to play?
No.
This is the game. So if you don't want Trump to win, you have to get these quotes right. All right.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Not really. I'm scared. It's a problem that we even have to worry about this as a nation. But here we are.
Here we are. So I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right.
Sure, why not?
We got to raise the stakes somehow, man. Oh man.
I thought 2020 couldn't get any worse.
All right. Let's start. The first quote. I'm pretty good in English. I always did very nicely in English. Who said it?
Trump.
I want to say that's Trump.
Trump?
Trump.
That has to be Donald Trump, because I'm pretty sure Hitler only spoke German, and the quote is in English.
Correct. Okay, you get one.
God.
All right, here's another quote. Socialism is a fraud, a comedy, a phantom, a blackmail.
Trump.
I want to say Mussolini on that one.
Socialism. I feel like it's got to be Trump.
Blackmail. That's Trump.
That has to be Mussolini.
You got it. You got it. That was Mussolini.
Oh, I was going to say that it was between Trump and Mussolini. Darn it.
They had blackmail as a word back then? Yes, you're using too much deductive reasoning. All right, next one. Grab him by the pussy.
Trump.
Oh, that's Trump. Come on.
Oh, that's Trump. Yeah. Okay, next one. You actually have multiple opportunities to get this right. It's better to live one day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep. Who said that? That's going to be Mussolini.
Ooh. Hitler?
Hitler.
Mussolini.
Mussolini?
If you said Mussolini or Trump, Mussolini said it, and then Trump tweeted it. So
that's the worst.
So so you lose $2 for that one. Okay.
No.
And it's of course terrifying that he is tweeting fucking Mussolini.
Yes.
That is not good. Wow, you owe Trump a lot of money. Okay.
Wait, how many have I gotten right?
I'm not keeping track. I lost count a long time ago. So let's just say you owe $10 to Trump so far. Okay.
This is the worst day.
I'm proud to have that German blood. Uh-oh. Is that Trump?
Oh God, Trump.
That sounds like something Trump would say.
It can't be Hitler. That's too obvious. Trump?
is Trump.
Oh, God.
Isn't that
He's the worst.
terrible?
Yes.
That was the one that like made me feel sick to my stomach.
Well, I mean, Germans as a whole are very nice, but if he's referring to Hitler, which I wouldn't be surprised if he was.
He definitely subscribes to this eugenics theory of like, let's promote the best genes and that you're screwed if you have the wrong genes. And then while he was on this rant about that, he was bragging about being German. It's not good. So I'll send you the link to that. It's really
Please
horrible
don't.
video. Yeah, you need it. We laugh out of like sheer terror. We're laughing because we know we're fucked, okay, for the record. Next quote, we got 2 more. Are you ready?
Wait, are you asking me or is that the quote? That's you're asking me. I'm ready.
Fucking awesome. Okay, next question. A nation of spaghetti eaters cannot restore Roman civilization.
Mussolini.
It can't be Mussolini because that would be insane. But he wasn't saying so. Maybe it is. I don't know. Is it?
Oh, was that Hitler?
Whoa. Really?
That's a real quote.
Say Mussolini.
I want to say Donald Trump, but I'm going to say Hitler?
That was Mussolini. He literally was talking shit about his own country.
A nation of spaghetti eaters cannot restore Roman civilization.
What a dick. All right. Last one. An extremely credible source has called my office and told me that Barack Obama's birth certificate is a fraud.
Donald Trump.
Trump.
That's got to be Trump.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, all right. You are a winner.
Thanks, I really appreciate it. I was just laid off, so this $6 is really going to help.
I came out the gate strong, man, but I lost it at the end.
You start mixing up your Hitler and your Mussolini.
Where do I collect my money? Or does it come in the mail since that doesn't work now?
Yeah, well, I'll write you a check. You can expect it anytime between now and a few years from now. I think you got like almost all of them wrong, but that's okay.
I know. Well, no, I got the first like 3 right, I thought. I was on a roll
were
for
on a
a
roll.
second. Please don't donate anything to Trump.
In good conscience, I would never donate to Trump, so just had to raise the stakes. Okay,
Yeah,
sweet. Well, that's it. That was the whole game.
Ooh, that was fun.
Yeah. I think the ultimate point of this segment, of course, is the fact that you had to use different modes of analysis to determine who said it, other than just like, let's think about their character. What would they say, right? Like that was not a viable means of determining who.
So, guys, I'm going to chime in here as like a casual listener hearing this conversation, hearing the information you guys are pitching forward. And on the one hand, we're talking about fascism. And on the other hand, we keep talking about examples of things actually going on here in America. So the question that raises in my mind is, are we moving towards fascism in America?
Yes. 1,042%. That is exactly where we are moving in. As someone who just read Mussolini's autobiography, I can say so many of the fucking things that he was concerned about that was happening on the left are what right-wingers are concerned about now. I think that we are pretty much at a corporatist state. The other side doesn't necessarily care what happens to the other. I think that is a huge hallmark of fascism. I don't think Trump is the end-all be-all of this path. I think there's someone after Trump. I think all these QAnon people who are running in primaries, I think the next step is the democratic takeover of people who are more sympathetic to fascists. And I think that's where we're headed right now. Keep in mind, Hitler won the German election to be the leader with 33% of the vote. So, I mean, you really don't need a huge majority to make a huge impact.
Trump is obviously like outwardly fascist. He's purposefully trying to encourage a fascist ideology in the United States.
You know, I don't actually believe our government is entirely fascist at this point. I think it operates, and Donald Trump's ideology is very much in line with how fascism controls the government and controls people.
We just kind of went over some of the hallmarks that really like speak to us, but there's just few others that are really important. Let's go through that, like the part of that list, some of the stuff we've talked about.
I mean, I know the first thing you just brought up right there was like, you know, IDing the enemies. That was one of the first things you brought up. That is more relevant than ever. You know, the word Marxist has been thrown around so much lately, inappropriately too.
Marxist. No.
It does not even fit. You would honestly think that Karl Marx was the dude from Assassin's Creed, the way they fucking talk about him. and furthermore, they're not even using it right? Like now we're seeing Fox News even calling Joe Biden a Marxist.
Jesus Christ.
And even if we are rightfully calling people Marxists, like if they even were, it's not illegal. And he looks like the dude from the Zigzag cover. So I don't really see what the fucking issue is and why people are talking about it. Regardless, centrist.
We're gonna drop a. We're gonna.
Yeah, we should. He looks.
Yeah, like he's a lovable, like he kind of looks like a hipster. Marx does.
He looks like Hagrid from Harry Potter, as I've said before.
Yeah, and so like what we see happening in our country right now, there was recent news that the Department of Justice has been, I believe it was the Department of Justice, whatever, who fucking cares, some federal agency was starting to create dossiers that is like create a profile on people that they wanted to label as Antifa, and they were using very weak evidence to try to identify people as Antifa. And just for reference for our listeners, in case you don't know, Antifa is short for anti-fascist. Really scary that the government that they would identify as their enemies, they start with anti-fascists. Kind of makes you look like a fucking fascist.
Right.
But anyway, I digress. I mean, right? Like, oh, we hate the anti-fascists.
Right.
Oh, what does that mean about you? But the point of labeling somebody a terrorist is once you're labeled a terrorist, then they're trying to say that you're they were trying to connect these people with foreign governments. And what happens then is you no longer have the rights of an American citizen. And so they can do what you saw in fascist countries that Decatur talked about in the last segment, which is that they can lock you up without giving you rights. So that is really fucking unfortunate. We look at Guantanamo as an
Guantanamo, perfect example. We shouldn't have to explain how shitty it would be to be locked up without rights, which is kind of all ties into what we're seeing, you know, in Portland, which is kind of the next topic we should kind of touch on is, you know, the secret police that Trump has deployed in Portland now.
Yeah, the secret police in Portland is a terrifying thing. I think this is what kind of motivated both of us to do this episode, right? Like, secret police, to be clear, is not something unique to fascism. In fact, secret police is something, when I hear the phrase secret police, my very first thought is Stalin's Russia. Stalinism and Maoism, which is like China's communist country, those were authoritarian governments, to be clear. They committed mass murders. The point is, though, is that secret police is a hallmark of any authoritarian government where you kind of just have this extra legal, you know, people who operate outside the law and they don't really identify who they are, but they're really operating for the central government, and they just kind of remove political enemies from society. Literally the thing of nightmares from any dystopian film you've seen. I'm thinking of like Handmaid's Tale. I'm thinking of like, you know, 1984, like any dystopian
Nick and Nora's
book
Infinite Playlist with Michael Cera.
Oh shit! There's some rom-com, and suddenly all these unmarked vans circle their stupid fucking like whatever hipster car they were driving in that movie and take them away. And like, but that's terrifying, right? But this might help you understand if you understand, like, okay, everyone's against secret police except for authoritarian fascists. Is like even some members of the military immediately came out and said like, yo, you need to, like, we're against this. Like, is this some random ass militia guy that's gonna rape me back at their house, or is this actual police? Like, we need to.
And I think
know.
what makes this time so scary, you know, we're talking about is this fascism, is we look at all the people who are supporting that, and I think that's where it gets scary, because that's so reminiscent of what we talked about before with like the Patriot Police. Yeah, like get them, fuck their rights. Like, I'm pissed at them doing something I disagree with, so they should be locked up. And even furthermore, you know, we see the secret police aren't fucking with the counter protesters who are at these rallies, you know, the All Lives Matter protesters who show up with their guns.
All right, capitalism leads to corporatism, right? But capitalism at its base is ideally just like this deregulated economy. It could involve small business, it could involve big business. It doesn't matter. Like, it's about government, get out of our economy. But corporatism is really about this like worshiping of the government kind of serving the interests of not every business in the country, but specifically the very powerful people in the country. The article points out that corporatism is a hallmark of fascism, is this idea of like, we are going to pick a few elite allies, you know, that there are the corporate leaders in our country, the industry, And you can see examples of that in Germany, of like what were the big businesses at the time. They didn't eliminate people talk about like, oh, National Socialism. Like, no, I'm sorry, Hitler's Germany was not socialist whatsoever. Like, the next point I want to ask you about, Decatur, is state violence, right? State violence is a hallmark of a fascist country. It is, in a way, any authoritarian country, but specifically in fascism, they obsess over national security. They obsess over the supremacy of the military, the police, crime and punishment. Can you talk about that?
Well, first off, let's be honest. Tanks look cool, and there is something great about watching a tank go down a street. I'm sorry, it's the facts. I don't write the rules of the world.
It's pretty badass. It's pretty badass.
It is
That's
badass.
a fact.
Honestly, I look forward every year to when the videos come out of Kim Jong-un, mobbing down the street with his squad. He looks cool.
Dude, that's going to be, if you ever run for office one day, that would be like the little clip people would use. Like, oh, you want to vote for this guy? He said he loves Kim Jong-un.
I would double down and diss Seth Rogen and James Franco for that movie. Fascism really becomes like super obsessive with national security, which I think is super relevant to right now, because look at how many of your friends, I'm talking to the entire audience, you all have libertarian friends. We all do. I know, especially if you're a white male, every white male goes through a libertarian phase at some point in their life. White people do two things. They go through, a Mos Def phase and a libertarianism phase. It's just
Most
what
Def
people do. So
yeah, those are our only two things we have to do before we die.
And then suppress everyone else.
Yeah. Wait, Peter, did you go through a libertarian phase in your life?
Fuck no, I was born and bred a progressive.
Oh, hey,
good man.
Did you go through a phase where you listened to a lot of Mos Def?
Oh, Mos Def.
There we go. See, it's one or the other.
You got me 50-50.
It's what it has to be, at least.
But yeah.
Okay, so you're a white man then.
People are obsessed with national security because, and we're like, I bring up the libertarians because people who deem themselves libertarians are no longer focused on small government right now. We see so many of these people backing up what's happening in Portland.
I can't stand that. Sorry to interrupt you. I need to vent that real quick. Is like, if you're a lifetime libertarian, I remember my libertarian friends when Obama was president, and everybody that I knew who was more kind of libertarian leaning, even conservatives, they were really upset about how big Obama's government was, right? They were really upset about the way he used force for anything, the way he responded to protests, the way he operated himself abroad. And so now that Trump is doing the same shit, if not worse, where are you at?
Thousand,
you know what I'm saying?
%.
Like,
it's really upset.
They're on the opposite
it's really
side
upsetting,
now.
But I will give a shout out to my main guy, Vermin Supreme. Vermin Supreme has been very anti what's happening in Portland, and I gotta respect a libertarian who really stays true to his word. Eamon Bundy, surprisingly, is going hard for for all of this, and I gotta respect it because he's saying, listen, defund. He's going farther than people on the left and saying, yeah, you guys should totally defund the fucking police. Let's talk about one of the biggest things about fascism, and if it relates to now, is mass encampment. And I think that we both know that this is a huge deal, and I think all of us know that what we see down at the border right now is teetering on the exact edge, and I would say it is the exact same thing. It's just the situation is different.
Well, it has all the hallmarks of it, right? Like, we're talking about the rounding up and imprisonment of ethnic minorities, and we're doing it with that's just totally extrajudicial. There's no crime; it's just based on their nationality, right? And like, this is happening in a way that's truly disgusting. That is only rivaled by what happened in Germany and Italy, and what Mussolini was doing in Africa, and what we're seeing on the border is. It should be, I believe this, and maybe I'm an ignorant fucking idiot for this, but I believe that most people in this country, if they actually went to the ICE detention facilities on the border and they saw children in cages, they would have to be against it, right? It's a matter of just like out of sight, out of mind at this point. But what our government is doing willingly, despite people raising the issue at the top of their lungs, our government continues to separate families and put children in cages. And this is something that, like, if we let's say theoretically the American experiment ended in a few years and some other government took us over, and now it's 20 years later and we're looking back in the history books, we'd be talking about this in a very similar way to the way we currently talk about Nazi Germany's concentration camps, right? Like, what did those people do wrong other than be Jewish or Catholic or whatever?
And by the way, it became, like those were the laws that Hitler eventually placed. It's to make it essentially illegal to be Jewish. Which is like,
right.
It's so important.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Authoritarians take away the fucking power and shit. But when they do these mass encampments, it's legal. And that's the scary part. Before they do this, they have to win the election, and when they're not arresting black people, they're taking away black people's rights, and they're taking away the community's rights. And one of the biggest rights they take away and make it incredibly hard to do is vote.
Absolutely. And they do that in so many ways. One of them, of course, is if you have a felony, you can't vote. And a lot of states make it extremely difficult to restore your right to vote. But then there's 1,000 other ways they do it if you've never even committed a crime. We're talking about gerrymandering. We're talking about voter ID laws. We're talking about all sorts of, we're not making it a national holiday on the day to vote. So you'd have to like make a choice between your fucking job and voting.
Which is like what this last, hallmark is like the fraud in elections. And we always see dictators win by like 80% and shit. And we always know it's wrong because no one would want, there's not 80% of a country who wants any dictator. That's just, or I mean, even a president, the greatest polled at like 70%, so there's no way that all these people would always poll at 80%, which is the one thing that I'm most scared about. I don't know about you, Steve, about what's happening right now.
I agree.
I've been telling people everyone needs to vote no matter what. This is obviously the biggest election of their life, as was the last one, and this one still is. Two things can be true. Trump has a legitimate shot to totally rig this thing. You see them pretty much dismantling the United States Postal Service, which was always going to be my fallback job, by the way, when I was 35 and realized that my music career is going nowhere. I was just going to become a postal worker.
We're getting close, bud. You better get your mail skills
well, I'm
down.
Have to work for FedEx now.
Exactly. Fucking A, man. Yeah, no, the fraudulent election thing is going to be a whole separate episode. I haven't even told Decatur this yet, but this is a really fucking big deal. Like the mail-in voting problem, the gerrymandering problem. There's just like so many things we can talk about on the ways that your vote. Look, I don't want to say it doesn't matter because it definitely does matter, but it matters less than it should. Right. And its actual outcome on public policy is even less than its outcome on who becomes president. Right. Like, so your voting is we live in a kind of fake democracy in a lot of ways. And international groups have analyzed our country and they don't even call us a full on democracy anymore. And so this is really problematic. Fraudulent elections is a hallmark of a fascist government. And when you see Trump tweeting stuff like delay the election, and then he's already starting to sow the seed of doubt towards mail-in voting and that maybe this entire election is going to be invalid if we do mail-in voting. Let's conclude this idea. Are we in a fascist government right now? What's your take? I'm going to start with Peter, our producer.
We are totally fucked. Every time you mention a tenet of fascism, I'm like, God damn it, that's happening here.
Well, good. I'm glad that we made you depressed.
What's your take, Decatur? What do you think?
There are no cops on the highway, and we are driving way over the speed limit. So we are approaching that exit much sooner than anticipated. I think that we're still a couple exits away, but boy, are we getting close. And I think what happens is Trump, thankfully, in a lot of ways, is too dumb to be a fascist. But the person who comes after Trump, or if Trump just gets some new people around him, if he wins again, we're going to see the end of a democratic society, and we will be 6 years in, and this is looks like a fascist nation for sure.
Where my opinion, none of us are saying no. Okay, so that's really sad. I think that we're a bit closer than Decatur's mentioning, and I do think Trump is stupid as fuck, but I don't think that being stupid is disqualifying to be fascist. So what I say is that Trump is definitely the exact kind of personality like Hitler that this entire fascist, let's call it an experiment, government, whatever, it's all premised on an ego trip, right? Like this guy wanted to be supremely powerful, and so did Benito Mussolini. And I think that you see that same thing with Trump. And I think that he's laying the groundwork for a fascist government that isn't quite there. So with that, I agree with Decatur that we're very close. We do have all the tenets of fascism, but we have it to a degree that's a little bit lighter than we saw in Mussolini's government or Hitler's government.
Trump in some ways is a puppet of Bannon, and I think Bannon is the true
Steve Bannon of Breitbart.
You know, former Hollywood director, super elite, goes around all the European countries and helps right-wing movements grow, including the Vox Party in Spain, what we're seeing in Poland, all these ultra-nationalist parties that are taking off. He's a big fan of Bolsonaro in Brazil.
Right? Steve Bannon
listen, Steve Bannon is a goddamn evil genius.
Fucking fascist.
Like, flat out, he is the mastermind. Steve, I know we've talked about this privately. What my answer is that we're fucked. And the minute Donald Trump wins, no one has ever successfully resisted fascism. Like, once it's in place, historically, look at what got Italy and Germany out of it. It was World War II. And that wasn't exactly like, that's just because shit went awry.
And it wasn't a revolution. It was people from other countries coming in.
Exactly. And that's my thing, is these countries, like, there was more powerful countries that could stop them. With America, if America became fascist, who the fuck is going to stop America? No one.
It's been super depressing. The United States is undefeatable in military might, so if we become fascists, we're all fucked. That's the thing, is like, I used to love dystopian films and novels and all that. That was like one of my favorite genres, like legit. But now it's not that fun to watch. Like Handmaid's Tale, I would not watch that right now. Like, for real, like I would not watch that right now, because that would layer on the depression of what I see actually happening in a really serious way.
All there is to watch right now is like the Korean Baseball League and Pornhub. Those are the only two things that you can watch and not want to just kill yourself.
This has been fucking awesome. I'm glad to be back in the groove of things. Season 2 is going to be great.
Better than number 1.
Get ready. It's going to be, number 1 sucked, let's be honest. But let's talk about what we got coming up. We got an episode we're going to do on QAnon. We're going to do an episode on Kamala Harris. We're going to do an episode on, what else did we say?
Maybe like capitalism, Marxism, Guantanamo, maybe
Marxism,
Middle East
capitalism,
politics, all that.
Mental health.
Woo. Mental health.
Oh, fucking, oh my God.
Miraculous producer,
Peter Pants. So what I asked Peter Pants, and we're going to do this coming up, is we're going to ask him about the criminalization of mental health, the way that our society just looks at mental health problems and says, arrest them. That's the answer. And so I see that. I'm really biased, because of what I do for a living, a defense attorney. But, Peter Pants has a lot of insight into that. And so it's going to be a great episode. So anyway, you guys keep being you. Give us all your money on Patreon. Take out your wallet, whatever you have, whatever your credit limit is, give it to us. And just like, suffer the consequences, because we need your money more than you do. And I'm
I think it's important for what we've done on this. If we do become a fascist nation, then we on this podcast are more important than
we're going to be on. Well, that's a fact, but also we're going to be on the run, right? Like, that's a fact as well. We're going to be like a Jason Bourne situation where we need every dime we can get. We're going to have like 16 passports.
And Peter Pan hopped on at the right time, because now he's also going to have to cram into whatever Honda Civic that we find to put all our shit in. And...
Oh, man. Okay, let's fucking end this thing. People are sick of us. Right, let's get out of here. Yeehaw.
The policy and faith of Io sarò alla vostra testa.
Hail Trump! Oh, hail victory!
Trying to take you out with bullshit.